Considering recent budget implementation challenges, I have directed that efforts be made to assure effective implementation of the Appropriation Repeal and Amendment Act 2020.
President Buhari signs 10.81 trillion naira revised 2020 appropriation bill into law.
All regions in the world are projected to experience negative growth.
Minister of Finance presents 3-year medium-term expenditure framework with a projected deficit of 5.16 trillion naira.
The grazing areas are overtaken by the taifa grass. The fishery resources are affected by it.
A new lease of life for communities living along channels of Hadija Guru Wetland as correspondent X-rays tourism potential of the area. Plus, Nigerians in illegal detention in Lebanon soon to regain freedom as House of Representatives meets with Lebanese ambassador. Good evening and welcome to the news at 9 on the NTA. I am Jumai Yusuf. Today was quite a wet day at the Federal Capital Territory, and we hope you had a feel of the weather across the zones and you are still keeping safe and observing all the protocols on COVID-19. Tonight on board this new ship, Jennifer Igwe is in Lagos and she's my co-pilot. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll begin with the presidency. The revised 2020 Nigeria's Appropriation Act of 10.81 trillion naira has been signed into law. President Muhammadu Buhari performed the constitutional responsibility occasioned by the impact of COVID-19 on the nation's economy. At a brief but significant event, the president promised that ministries, departments and agencies will receive not less than 50% of the amended capital budgets before the end of this month. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo has the details.
The adjustment in the estimates of Nigeria's 2020 budget of sustainable growth and national development was in response to the sharp decline in the prices of crude oil in the world market, as well as the widespread disruptions in global economic activities due to the coronavirus pandemic.
The 2020 budget, which I have just signed into law today, underscores our administration's firm commitment to effectively contain the spread of COVID-19 and protect the lives and livelihood of our people. With these budget amendments, as well as our recently launched 2.3 trillion naira stimulus program, we are well positioned to safeguard the economy.
The revised 2020 budget of 10.81 trillion naira has an increase of 216 billion naira over what was initially proposed in the 2020 Appropriation Act. It is made up of 2.48 trillion naira for capital expenditure, 4.94 trillion naira recurrent, 2.6 trillion naira for debt service, and 2.9 trillion naira sinking fund.
Considering recent budget implementation challenges, I have directed that efforts be made to assure effective implementation of the Appropriation Repeal and Amendment Act 2020 in order to realize its laudable objectives. All ministers are to ensure that their ministries, departments and agencies intensify capital project delivery efforts and fully cooperate with the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning to achieve the laudable objectives of the budget.
As at May 31st this year, only over 253 billion naira had been released for the implementation of capital projects. President Muhammadu Buhari is, however, assuring the nation that before the end of this month, all the ministries, departments and agencies will receive not less than 50% of their amended capital budgets.
I thank all Nigerians for their understanding and unflinching support, especially during these difficult times.
And the implementation of this will start immediately, probably from today. The efforts that we have made in this particular budget is to ensure that there are a lot of supports for individuals as well as businesses, especially the SMEs. And this will ensure that businesses are able to stay afloat and individuals are able to live a life that is meaningful. So I believe that this is a budget that we have gotten right. The implementation, I'm very optimistic, will be significant. We may not achieve 100%. If we can, why not? But I believe that we can achieve nothing less than 80% by the end of the year.
The National Assembly are rising to the expectations of Nigerians, partnering with the executive to deliver on services to the Nigerian people. And for me, that is responsibility, that is partnering in nation building, and indeed that is what they had been elected to do. And also we appreciate the relationship because they had also demonstrated in many ways than one that they are committed to serving the Nigerian people.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, is expected to provide details of the amended 2020 budget in the coming days. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
And to talk more on the President assent to the 2020 revised budget is Ita Enang, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Niger Delta Affairs. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
For the past 5 months, revenue has been underperforming. And how would we place the revised budget now, keeping in mind the, sources of revenue generation to fund the budget? How do we do that?
I think it's been quite challenging, and let me first of all congratulate the Mr. President and the National Assembly and the Executive for the cooperative effort in delivering the budget within time, that is the revised budget, and even in the wisdom of coming up to propose the revision. The sources of funding for the budget is going to be a challenge, but it's not going to be a challenge if we, as everybody puts on his thinking cap and goes on working. The first February, March, April, May, there were significant drop in revenue. There was the economic lockdown of the economy. The planes were not flying. Nigerians were not traveling. A lot of economic activities were not going on, which generates revenue to the economy. This is going to be a challenge. There were other items of trade that used to bring in money, the ports, the airports, the seaports, and all that. All of that were. But this has been taken account of by way of, one, borrowing, two, cutting our coat according to our cloth, not according to our size, not according to our need now, and then redirecting our sources of expenditure to the sectors that will ensure first livelihood before we talk of life before livelihood. And of course, we've also made provision for the COVID-19. But let me just draw attention of the National Assembly that there was one budget laid, made up of two elements. The element is one, the national budget. Then the other ones are the budget of the agencies under the Fiscal Responsibility Act. They have passed the national budget of 10.81 trillion. The other ones of the budget of the different agencies is where they are likely to have money to fund the budget. Now, the budget of the Central Bank, Deposit Insurance, Communications Commission, the Nigerian Television Authority, and all the other agencies. Because it is when now that we don't have money, not much money, you have to go to the real details of the budget of the agencies and make sure that they only spend on items that are extremely necessary so that they will remit the rest of the money to the federal consolidated revenue fund of the federal government, which will be used in funding the budget. Therefore, I suspect that from the 21st or 22nd of July, they may proceed on the statutory annual recess. It will not be fair, and I want to plead with them for the sake of the economy to make sure that the budget of all the agencies are passed, because they may be returning, if the timetable is standard, sometimes late September. And if they come back in late September to pass this budget in September, these people will only have 3 months to operate. And again, it is more important to consider the budget of these agencies now, because if you don't, then the agencies will keep spending in the manner they have been spending. The Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Budget and National Planning also have to take interest in the budget of each of these agencies. not just what the committees do, but after considering the budget by the committees, it is reported to the floor of the Senate and the House, and it is passed, so that there's a large amount of money that is contained in this budget that can fund this budget without stress.
Okay, recession is is imminent around the world, and Nigeria is not left out, and oil production has gone down. Reforms in collection agencies like Custom and FIRS are in place. Do you think Nigeria can attain her best case scenario in this situation now?
Nigeria has a chance and opportunity to be the best country in Africa, if not the world, because we are blessed with land for agriculture. Instead of importing rice, let me appreciate what the central bank is doing, what the financing banks, what NISAL is doing in supporting farmers, those who are doing cassava, maize, rice, oil palm, rubber, cocoa, and all those other ones, and even the Nexim Bank and all of them. Let us go back to the ground. Again, let us work very hard to make sure that we refine petroleum products and use it local in Nigeria. Instead of, now that subsidy is gone, we just have to go to, I have been in consultation with the Ministry of Science and Technology and all these other people, and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and others have been working on how to get and mobilize domestic refiners. Even this small one-room size petroleum refining product, so that we refine and use locally. And this will engage our citizens. It will also reflect our economy. And what we are losing by not exporting much of our crude products, we will be gaining by refining and using it locally, so the economy will not be challenged.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator Ita Enang, SSA to President Buhari on Niger Delta Affairs. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Input. Now, the federal government has projected a deficit of 5.16 trillion naira in 2021 due to the gap between revenue and expenditure, but will not be taking credit with severe conditions on the economy. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed at the presentation of the 2021-2023 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper said the challenges brought upon the global economy by the coronavirus pandemic will see Nigeria record lower GDP figures the last 2 quarters of 2020. Leah Katung Babatunde completes the story.
Nations and institutions are replanning their year after taking a hit from COVID-19. Nigeria, as a major commodity exporter, has suffered a real revenue setback, with government re-strategizing her revenue sources. A major concern for government is that Nigeria will likely enter a second recession in 4 years with adverse consequences. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed disclosed that the MTEF, as the key framework for the 2021 budget, has a target to maintain the 3% deficit to GDP ratio aspiration.
For the multilateral institutions, that is to say the World Bank, the African Development Bank, most of our debts to them are concessionary debts. These are debts that have very low interest rate, most of them 1% or even sub 1%. The multilateral institutions under the umbrella of G20 and the bilateral institutions under the umbrella of G20 has offered countries to take up an offer to have a stay of debt repayment from May to December 2020. And that means to resume repayment in January 2021. We have initially indicated that we'll take that offer, but on review of the offer, the conditionalities on the offer made us to hesitate.
Data, reforms, financial inclusion and demographics are some of the key points of the framework. The 2021 budget will reflect a revenue and expenditure of all government-owned enterprises, excluding the oil companies.
The medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper remains a work in progress.
The immediate adjustments to government policies include reduction in customs revenue projections, stamp duty, VAT and companies' income tax in the revised 2020 budget that has seen a revenue underperformance of 44% in the first 5 months of the year, and government projects growth to contract to 4.2% at the end of 2020. Key assumptions in the medium term. Oil benchmark for 2021 to 2023 is $40 per barrel. Exchange rate 360 naira to the dollar. Inflation will remain at double digit during the period, and GDP growth rate is pegged at 3%. In Abuja, Leakatung Babatunde, NTA News.
Still staying with the presidency, President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the immediate suspension of Ibrahim Magu as acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in order to allow for unhindered inquiry by the Presidential Investigation Panel under the Tribunals of Inquiry Act and other relevant laws. A statement by Special Assistant to the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice and Media and Public Relations, Dr. Jibrilu Gwandu Umar, says President Buhari also approved that the EFCC Director of Operations, Mohammed Umar, should take charge and oversee the activities of the Commission pending the conclusion of the ongoing investigation and further directives in that regard. Talking judiciary now, the judiciary in Nigeria has been told to be sensitive to the damage being caused to the society by corruption while also being guided by the provisions of the law. This call came from participants at a virtual conference held to mark the 4th African Day of Anti-Corruption. Femi Okeo reports.
The theme for this year's African Day of Anti-Corruption is fighting corruption through effective and efficient judicial system. And why not? More and more countries in the African continent are realizing that the fight against corruption only by the executive arm of government cannot succeed without a legal foundation and the authority of the law. And so, participants, one after the other, gave their inputs on how an effective and efficient judicial system can clean up the society of the menace of corruption. It was the chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Itsesage, that fired the first salvo when he warned that with its over-reliance on technicalities, the Nigerian judiciary was portraying itself as being hostile to the fight against corruption. But other contributions pointed to the weak investigation and prosecution of corruption cases that make it inevitable for corruption cases to fail on trial.
Systemic corruption has weakened all of us, not just anti-corruption agencies. It's also weakened the judiciary as well. So if we work together, we can remove that disability in order to strengthen ourselves.
Of course, obstacles that have been mentioned, especially from the bench, is the fact that they are confronted with improper investigation, rush to prosecution, and then lack of skill on the part of the prosecutors and investigators.
So many justices of the Court of Appeal participated in the virtual conference, but it was the president of the court herself, Justice Monica Memson, that struck the chord when she made the comparison between crimes where investigation can go on for as long as 10 years, but trial concluded in 3 months, compared with our own crime, where investigation is taken only for about a few days, with trial running into years. That, she says, cannot augur well for the fight against corruption. In Abuja, Femi Okewo, NTA News.
The Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio, says since he took over as the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs in 2019, he has not authorized the award of any contract except the COVID-19 project. The minister stated this at the day 2 of the investigative hearing on the alleged 40 billion naira misappropriation by the Interim Management Committee of the NDDC. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Onko reports.
It's been 2 days of fact-finding by the Senate's Ad hoc Committee on Niger Delta Development Commission. The presence of the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs further illuminated the investigation. He explained that most of the funds expended by the Interim Management Committee did not pass through him, as the funds were below the threshold for his approval, which affects adequate supervision of the expenditures of the Commission.
But we noticed several kinds
made payments in NDDC. There are different steps to take before payments are made.
Against the submission of the interim committee that it had cleared most of the backlog of debts owed contractors, the chairman of the Niger Delta Development Commission Contractors Association, Joe Adia, made a contrary submission.
What the contractors that are being owed for over 10 years, a tax place there, you must pay so and so amount, 20% and so on, to get your payment. As an example, I did a road. It's called Okania Road. Road 5, Road 7, Road 11, Mpoba, 19, Road in Port Harcourt. My payment was processed and I was paid. Me collecting percentage. If anybody has any proof, any way, meet the committee, and I've collected 1%, even 1%, I will resign on the spot.
The interim committee had on the first day of the investigative hearing alleged that some members of the National Assembly Standing Committee on Niger Delta Development Commission have been interfering with its budgets over the years. Some senators have reacted to the allegation.
It still stands as allegation. We are doing our own job. We are having a lot of input from CBN, from Minister of Niger Delta itself, and the Accountant General Office.
The accusation was made and the people were not there to defend themselves. And we're not working on accusations, we're working on the facts.
The forensic audit of the Commission's accounts is still ongoing. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
This is NTA Network News. More reports when we return. Thanks for joining us. Minister of Defense Major General Bashir Sali Magashi has met with the House of Representatives Committee on Defense on the need for more legislation in the fight against insurgency and armed banditry. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
After a closed-door session of the meeting, both the Defense Minister Major General Bashir Sali Magashi and House Committee Chairman Babajimi Benson said the discussion focused on issues that will add value to the lives of the armed forces and assist in bringing back peace and succor to communities affected by insurgency.
We have been able to understand some of the problems facing the ministry, and we have understood their oversight function, and we are ready to work together and achieve a common goal.
We've been able to bridge some communication and some misconceptions. We've been able to explain some things to us. It could have been a broader meeting, but because of the COVID-19 issues, we decided to restrict it to a couple of people.
Meanwhile, the Chairman Senate Committee on Independent National Electoral Commission, Senator Kabiru Ibrahim Gaya, at the committee meeting said the Electoral Amendment Bill will soon be passed by the Senate.
I believe Nigerians will be happy with the final Electoral Act of 2020.
Senator Kabiru Gaya, while calling on Nigerians to exercise more patience, said the committee has held a retreat in Lagos State with the INEC chairman and commissioners alongside international stakeholders. It is with a view to compiling reports for the public hearing on the bill. From the National Assembly, Abdullahi Aminu, NTA News.
Troops of Operation Thunder Strike, a subsidiary operation under Operation Accord, have rescued 3 kidnapped victims in Shikun local government area of Kaduna State. A statement by the coordinator, Defense Media Operations, Major General John Eneche, indicates that the rescue operation is sequel to a credible intelligence on the kidnap of the victims from their farm at Gwazumu Village, Shikun local government area of Kaduna State. Major General John Eneche notes that following confrontation from the troops with superior firepower, the bandits abandoned the victims and escaped in disarray with bullet injuries. Medics confirm first coronavirus case in northwest Syria, and Hong Kong closes school again amid rising cases of COVID-19. Joyce Ometo has latest developments on the pandemic.
advanced team from the World Health Organization left for China Friday for investigation into the origin of the coronavirus. WHO spokesperson Margaret Harris in a briefing said the two experts will work with Chinese scientists to determine the scope of the investigation. In the meantime, Hong Kong has announced closure of its entire school system from Monday after a spike in local transmission of COVID-19. The education minister made the announcement after parents were found among a cluster of new coronavirus cases. And northwest Syria has confirmed its first coronavirus case, raising fears for a region where hospitals lie in ruins and camps overflow with people after nearly a decade of war. Reports say the patient is a doctor at a hospital near the Turkish border. And from Uganda comes a report that coronavirus cases has exceeded 1,000. The country, which is among the least impacted in East Africa, has not recorded any death from the virus. As at 6 p.m., statistics by a coronavirus resource center in Johns Hopkins University show that 12,481,719 people globally have been infected, with 559,187 mortalities, while 7,271,897 have recovered. Out of these numbers, Africa has so far recorded 546,436 COVID-19 cases and 12,532 deaths. In Nigeria, 30,748 persons have been infected, out of which 12,546 have recovered, while 689 people have died from the virus. And that's a global update on COVID-19. Thanks for watching. I am Joyce Ometu.
Thanks, Joyce. Now, more than 400 health workers have contracted COVID-19 in the line of duty across the country. This development, health unions say, is dampening the morale of their members despite various government packages to encourage them as the battle against COVID-19 intensifies. Kevin Ebone reports.
As frontline workers in the fight against COVID-19, it is not unexpected that many health personnel may contract the virus due to exposure while handling patients. Apart from monetary compensation and other policies aimed at encouraging them to remain focused on winning the battle against the pandemic, critical in the process of achieving this is the availability of personal protective equipment, PPEs. To bridge the gap between what the government is providing and what is required, the Medical and Health Workers Union is standing up to be counted in supporting its members with the distribution of thousands of PPEs to the 38 state councils.
There is a chart of distribution to these councils reflecting the level of, or the level of cases, the amount of cases in each state.
For any organization or individual to have intervened in the way the Medical and Health Workers Union is doing today, that organization has to be applauded.
The intervention is to be sustained on a regular basis as the pandemic lasts. In Abuja, Kelvin Ewonwaye, NTA News.
The House of Representatives says Nigerians being illegally detained in Lebanon will soon regain their freedom. This followed a meeting between the House Committee on Diaspora, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Lebanese Embassy in Nigeria. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali tells us more.
Addressing journalists after a closed-door meeting, Chairman House Committee on Diaspora, Representative Tolulokpe Shadipe, says both Lebanon and Nigeria will work to ensure elimination of human trafficking, which she calls modern-day slavery.
The ambassador was nice enough to join us for that meeting. This meeting today has also further reiterated that the Lebanese community and the Nigerian community will always stand together to ensure that justice and the respect for human lives is a priority, and we will work together to bring modern-day slavery to an end.
She advised Nigerians to report suspected agents of human trafficking in persons to appropriate authorities. Minister of State Foreign Affairs Zubairu Dada stressed Thus, the ministry will at all times protect the interests of Nigerians in diaspora. In the meantime, the Lebanese ambassador to Nigeria, Hossam Diab, says, contrary to reports in some sections of the media, the meeting he had with the House Committee on Diaspora.
I was coming actually with good news to the chairwoman that all cases have been dropped against Mitopi, and we are bringing her tomorrow on the flight, Middle East Airlines flight from Lebanon, along with another 25 domestic workers.
He added that Nigeria and Lebanon have shared mutual respect, as the bilateral relationship dates back to the 18th century. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
The Nigerian Immigration Service has refused 58 Nigerian doctors' departure to London. A statement by the Nigerian Immigration Service Public Relations Officer, DCI Sunday James, indicates that a group of doctors attempted traveling aboard a UK-bound aircraft flight number ENT 550 with registration number SPES that flew in from London. Only 2 out of the 58 doctors had visa for entry to the United Kingdom. The statement adds that the service acted in line with Section 31, subsection 2A and B on powers conferred on the Comptroller General of Nigeria Immigration Service by the Immigration Act 2015 to prohibit departure of any person under the conditions stated in the Act. The chartered flight approved for London in Nigeria was to carry 42 medical doctors for a training program, but there were 58 with only 2 having visa for entry into the UK. It's a situation that calls for refusal of departure. The aircraft has now returned to London without the medical doctors. Now, a new life is unfolding for communities living along the channels of Hadija Guru wetlands. Their years of battle against invasive grass and birds is yielding results in their output of fishing and crop production. Hamis Rogo, in a visit to the area around Hadija in Jigawa State, reports that the wetland is also emerging as a potential tourism mecca.
Hadija Guru wetland is always a spectacle. Not only in its landscape, which is breathtaking, but also in the daily life that unfolds. In this place, more than 20,000 farming families find livelihood, either as crop fishermen or grazers, across 3 states of Jigawa, Yobe, and Bauchi. It is a water system that guarantees all year-round agricultural activity. Despite the generosity of the wetlands, for years it was at the crossroads.
The channels are blocked. Farmlands have been overtaken by this type of grass. The grazing areas are overtaken by the type of grass. The fishery resources are affected by it. In fact, formerly the fishery resources, the inland generation from this area within the Nigerian nation is 6%. Now it's less than 0.6%.
Things are changing for the better now. Years of continuous battle with the type of grass through mainly community efforts is opening multiple water channels now that were hitherto blocked and allowing more fishing activities and all year-round crop production downstream. It is also reducing farmer planning clashes along the river channels, although flooding is still an issue. Yes, one of the most exciting features of Hadija Unguru wetland is, of course, its tourism potentials. Now, look at our trajectory, our movement along the Likori Channel, downstream of Burungana. Beautiful. The story is that there is quantitative increase in productivity around the wetlands now, more than it was 20 years ago. However, the farmers around the area want a situation where the waters can be dammed at some specific points and irrigation channels drawn to allow for controlled water for fishing and irrigation. In Hadija, Jigawa State, Mohammed Hamis Rogo, NTA News.
You're watching the news on NTA. Let's now join Jennifer in Lagos for more reports. Hello, Jenny. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Jumai. Now, motorists in Lagos are appealing to concerned federal and state authorities to fix bad portions of roads and clear drainage channels to prevent pockets of gridlocks ahead of the Third Mainland Bridge closure. Dr. Guyemi reports on the state of some of the designated alternative routes.
This is what motorists who ply the Ikorodu Road go through on a typical workday, a situation that is further aggravated at peak periods.
It's going to bring some discomfort.
The news of the scheduled closure of the Third Mainland Bridge from the 24th July 2020 till the 24th of January 2021 was received with trepidation by motorists who openly wonder how they would successfully navigate their destinations without the physical and mental distress traffic jams trigger.
I don't know what miracle they are going to use to get this done.
If you close one terminal bridge, all the people that go to all this place, they go to pass here and everywhere go block.
The average driver sounds like innocent, decrying the deplorable condition of the Costain through to Alaka and Eric Moore roads, which are designated alternatives to the Third Mainland Bridge.
The repair they propose to do at the Third Mainland Bridge is good, but not until they fix these alternative routes.
The Federal Ministry of Works, however, states that they are in motion to counter the anticipated hitches.
The majority of the alternative roads have our contractors and they are working because we know it's going to bring a lot of pressure on our people, and we don't want that. So that's why all the contractors, they are directed to go and continue with their work.
Meanwhile, government has appealed for public cooperation in managing traffic with a call on commercial bus drivers who brazenly violate the highway code despite the obvious warning signs. In Lagos, Dotun Okunyemi, NTA News.
And to judicial matters, alleged killers of billionaire businessman Ignatius Odunukwe, who was kidnapped on the 1st of December 2019, then lured to a hotel room where he was tricked into signing off his property to the alleged murderers, have been charged to court. The suspects are now facing a 3-count charge at the Igboshede Magistrate Court in Lagos. Abolore Ogbara reports.
The 3 suspects pleaded not guilty before Chief Magistrate Komolafe after the charge was read to them. Officer in charge, Legal Zone 2, Paul Omo Ideyemin, told the court that the leader of the gang, Daniel Bob Ibeji, allegedly converted the victim's 900 million naira property in Abuja to his own. He also narrated that late Odunukwe was hit with an axe on the head by the suspects. He said the action was a deliberate offense.
The court have just made the order to me that the file should be duplicated and sent to DPP for legal advice, where upon the advice they will be properly arraigned in the High Court that has jurisdiction to try the offences they committed.
The Zonal Police Public Relations Officer, Zone 2, revealed that the exhibits recovered from the suspects were 1 medical identity card, an axe, remains of the victim in a carton, 3 AK-47 rifles, house documents of victim and other key evidences.
We are through with aspects, and that is why we have brought them here. The investigation reveals that the suspects were indicted.
Chief Magistrate Komolafe remanded the suspects in the Correctional Center, Ikoyi, and adjourned further hearing till 10th of August this year. In Lagos, Abolore Ogbara, NTA News.
There's still more on the news, but first a break, after which Jumai will continue in Abuja. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. The Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Mele Kyari, says the company has huge potentials that could help it overcome the challenges posed by the current COVID-19 volatility. He gave this assurance at the inauguration of the reconstituted board of the Petroleum Products Marketing Company, PPMC. A statement by Dr. Kenny Obatiro, Group General Manager, Group Public Affairs Division, quotes the GMD urging the board to sustain all-season availability of products across the country. He stresses that with its network of structure and competence for handling efficient product distribution nationwide, he is optimistic of positive feedback. Marlon Kyari, while inaugurating the new board of the corporation's downstream subsidiary at the NNPC Towers, Abuja, said PPMC is a vital asset critical to the development of the corporation's constitutional responsibility of energy sufficiency to the nation. 1,130 vulnerable youth and women in Abuja State have been captured in the second phase of the federal government's micro-enterprise enhancement loan geared towards tackling unemployment and poverty in Nigeria. Chinaza John reports that the beneficiaries got 10,000 naira each.
Before now, the likes of Ochiomoga Chinwendo, Sunday Wiki and Weibo Promise were mainly striving to survive and make ends meet, which is why they were among the 1,130 vulnerable youths and women selected from the 13 council areas of the state to benefit from the scheme implemented by the National Directorate of Employment.
So we are just surviving by the grace of God, coupled with this COVID-19.
When I reach home now, I take and buy good. Christmas, I go sell them more than this money.
Apart from enhancing the entrepreneurial skills of the beneficiaries, the scheme also focuses on developing the agricultural and the informal sectors of the economy. Stakeholders, including representatives of the Director General NDE, member representing Eza South Ikwo Federal Constituency, and Chairman Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission, lamented that unemployment remains a serious threat to Nigeria.
It is in view of this that NDE more than ever before has been deploying innovative strategies towards addressing the challenges posed by mass unemployment.
Enhancement loan scheme of the federal government implemented by the National Directorate of Employment, which of course got the sum of 11.3 million naira, is targeted at the vulnerable youths and women who are seen as the drivers of the economy. In Abakaliki, Chinaza John, NTA News.
Now sports. Nigeria Football Federation has adopted point per game system to end 2019-2020 all national leagues, set September-October as a tentative date for a new season. Tamara Ibwe has more on sports updates.